you so much, Steph. It is something Toronto's top doctor has been asking her provincial counterparts to do for weeks. And on Monday, the Ford government finally heeded her advice, put Toronto back into lockdown. Dr. Eileen de Villa had said lockdown-like restrictions were needed to slow the spread of COVID in our city. So is it going to work? And are these restrictions going far enough or not too far? Let's talk about all of this. Dr. de Villa joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you have a very, very busy schedule, so let's get right to it. Toronto and Peel now under lockdown, and obviously the recommendations that you and your team have put forward is what the province looked at and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and move this ahead. Is what you recommended going far enough, or did you want more to be done?
Well, I think that the success of the measures that have been put into place will largely rest on what each and every one of us in the City of Toronto does. And clearly this will apply for Peel, and it will apply to jurisdictions all around us. Government can only go so far. There are lots of things that can be done from a policy perspective, as we've just seen, using public health measures, issuing restrictions and closures. So this is part of the story. The other part of the story, which is what's on all of us to do, is to stay home as much as possible, because we know how this virus spreads. We know that the virus spreads from person to person when they're in close contact with each other, particularly in closed spaces and in circumstances where they can't wear a mask, or where they're talking with each other or breathing heavily, say, for example, in a gym, or doing exercise in that closed space for prolonged periods of time and, without the ability to, maintain distance or wear a mask. And of course, we also know that there are many, many people who work in circumstances that don't allow them to take that distance, to use masks, to stay at home. So for those people, essential workers, healthcare workers, all the more reason for those of us who can stay home to stay home.
Dr. de Villa, I'm glad you brought up gyms. So we had quite the discussion here this morning. I don't know if you caught it, but a lot of our callers, the debate of these big box stores being allowed to stay open, but all these smaller businesses who've put their hand up and said, we've done everything we can with COVID protocol. We're only letting in so many people into our store at a time. We are adhering to all of these rules. It doesn't feel fair for them if they've said they've done everything that they can, and they're saying the source of transmission isn't coming from them. So can you give us a bit of a perspective on how you've come about where you've decided to say this is going to close, this gets to stay open, because they're saying the outbreaks aren't coming from us?
So it's a lengthy conversation, and you've heard many of us talk about how agonizing and difficult these decisions are. Fundamentally, when it's come down to the regulations that are in place now for both Toronto and Peel, we should be clear that these are provincial regulations, and I'm not privy to those discussions. But I do have a sense as to the kind of considerations that need to go into that decision making, and I can tell you that it's extremely, extremely difficult. Obviously, we're concerned first and foremost about controlling the spread of the virus. We've seen what it can do, and we've seen the kinds of the damage it can cause, the illness it can cause, and the havoc that it can wreak on our healthcare system. But we also know that there are important elements of life, activities that need to continue, and that life isn't just about, and health isn't just about protecting against COVID-19. But we also need to make sure that there are opportunities for people to have some social connection with others, and for people to be able to have livelihoods. And we need strong economies, but we know that strong economies rests on people's health first. So I think these are the kinds of very difficult decisions that need to be made, which is why, again, I think it always comes back to, for those of us who have that choice, stay home as much as possible, really limit your interactions. And I think where we can best help businesses, local businesses, is to patronize them as much as possible through online means. Minimize the amount of time you're spending in stores. We know you need to go out and get your groceries. People may use big box stores for those essentials, but minimize your time there, shop online where possible, and I would actually ask people to support local businesses to the greatest extent that that is possible.
Dr. de Villa, we're hearing of at least one business, one restaurant saying, hey, they're going to open, and not just open, but dine in. I don't know if you've heard this story of this one restaurant in Etobicoke. I mean, I assume that this is sort of already going to be on the radar with bylaw officers, but this is probably not the first restaurant or business that is going to say, I'm done with this. I'm just going to go ahead and do what I'm going to do. So what do you say to them?
Well, what I would say is that, look, in order for us to be able to get back to life more like, we knew it before COVID-19, the more we can stick to the rules of staying at home as much as possible and really doing the best we can to limit the spread of the virus, the sooner we will get back to having indoor dining and all the other aspects of life that make, life fun and enjoyable and worth living in the city. I get that it has been a tough 2020. Believe me, there is nobody that knows this more than those of us who've been working in public health. But, flouting the rules and pretending that they don't apply to all of us equally, and particularly for those of us who have choices, who have options, just doesn't help us any further. So I would just ask people, please, as much as possible, stay home. There is absolutely nothing wrong. And in fact, there's everything right about patronizing local restaurants and businesses. And the best way to do that right now is to order takeout, delivery, pickup. Let's support our local restaurant industry that way. I think that's really, really important. But please, don't open your restaurants. And if you have, for those of you who might be tempted to eat that food, go ahead, please eat the food, but order it via takeout or delivery. I think that's a very viable way to show your support while at the same time making sure that we're following the rules and doing the best that we can together to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Dr. de Villa, we've run out of time. Thank you. But let's hope it doesn't go beyond that 28 days. Very quickly, we have run out of time, but do you anticipate it's going to, or too early to tell?
Definitely too early to tell. And again, in our hands. The more we can stay home, the more we can do what we need to do. And we've done it before. The sooner we will be beyond this.
Okay. Dr. de Villa, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Some important messages there, D&D. We're over to you.